This Wednesday on March 31st is the Transgender Day of Visibility, in which we recognize and hold up those who are transgender in the challenges that they face. My colleague and classmate in seminary, the Reverend Mr. Barb Grieve, prepared a prayer for this day.
Prayer for Trans Day of Visibility. Blessed are the trailblazers who brought us this far and are still trailblazing, still celebrating. Blessed are the drag queens and kings who remind us to not take life too seriously. Blessed are the gender benders, non-binary, gender fluid, and third gender folk, those who challenge us to reframe our gender paradigms. Blessed are the young ones who present fearlessly from the start. Blessed are their parents who make space for freedom and love their children fiercely. Blessed are the siblings and relatives who educate, support, and love us as we are. Blessed are the genderqueer youth who are struggling and still persist. Blessed are the 90-year-olds just coming out and those who have been out decades. Blessed are those whose lives were cut too short. May their stories live on through us. Blessed are the survivors. May they keep on living. Blessed are the allies learning to be accomplices. Blessed are those gathered here, witnessing, learning, celebrating. May we all commit to continue showing up, fighting for justice, celebrating all the genders in life. Amen.
For all those milestones that have been spoken aloud, and for those that we carry gently in our hearts. Let's be together in silence, knowing that whatever you carry with you today, you're never alone on the journey, and that you are loved. A moment of silence together. It is good to be together. The second reading today is another piece by Maya Angelou called Phenomenal Woman. It is also read by Maya Angelou.
Phenomenal Woman. Many people wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size. When I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenally. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man the fellows stand, or fall down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say, it's the fire in my eyes, the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist, the joy in my feet. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They try so much, but they can't touch my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they say they still can't see. I say, It's in the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the ride of my breasts, the grace of my style. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Now you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palms of my hands, the need for my care. Because I'm a woman, phenomenally, phenomenal woman. That's my mother and all your mothers, and my grandmothers and your grandmothers, and my great-grandmothers and your greats and my great-greats and all you women and me.
Special music this morning is a piece by Leah called Wild and Precious.
May I ever use my hands for lifting up. May I ever use my voice for speaking truth. May I consecrate each day and live with joy and wonder. May I sow in peace as all the wild things do. I will ever use my voice for lifting up. This voice was made for peace. I will ever use my eyes for seeking truth. These eyes were made for truth. I will consecrate each day and live with joy and wonder. I will sow in peace as all the wild things do. There is peace on I will reap in peace as all the wild things do. Wild and precious, we are wild and precious. Life is wild and precious.
This morning, the service is called Nothing Too Big or Too Small. If you have seen the iconic photograph of Gloria Steinem and a Black woman posing together with their fists raised, you have seen an image of Dorothy Pitman Hughes. Perhaps, like me a couple of months ago, you may have knowledge of one of these women and be unfamiliar with the profound impact that Dorothy Pitman Hughes had in Gloria's life and in the history of the women's movement and Black community activism. Laura Lovett, just this year, has published a story, her story, called With Her Fist Raised. Lovett writes that Hughes' story produces a history of the women's movement with children, race, and welfare rights at its core. A history of women's politics grounded in community organizing and African American economic development. Her story stands as a source for our living tradition, and that through the story of Dorothy Pitman Hughes, we hear and bear witness to the words and deeds of a prophetic woman, which challenges us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. I experience her story as a sacred text. Her community roots in the tiny village of Charles Junction, Georgia, in the late 1930s, laid the foundations for her lifelong dedication to challenge the structures of society. At an early age, she had experienced and understood the relationship between race and class, and that in the unlawful enforcement of white supremacy, there was potential for violence. This required Black parents to teach their children how to behave with the understanding that any infraction of the racial order could result in death. 83 years later, this is still true. Lovett writes, when Dorothy was 10, her father was beaten and left on the family doorstep for dead. She remembers, it was the KKK. She prayed that night that if her father lived, she would dedicate herself to making the world a better place. Like the young girl in The Time for All Ages, Dorothy made a promise to plant the seeds of justice wherever she was, and to live deeply into this promise by inspiring present and future generations. In Charles Junction, her developmental context was embodied by the Black Baptist Church, the social gospel doctrine, the golden rule, and a love and passion for singing, which she was quite accomplished at. As a truck driver, her father brought home stories of far-off cities and states. His children, including Dorothy, heard his stories and imagined going to other places. At the age of 20, she packed her bags and moved to New York City to work as a live-in domestic worker, earning 25 cents an hour. The domestic hiring practices were horrific and exploitive, referred to by some as the Bronx slave market. The person who hired her was given a gift of 100 green stamps. For those of you who don't have familiarity with green stamps, they were stamps that were given that you kept in a book and could turn in once you had a certain amount to get a gift. Gloria never forgot that in the eyes of her employer, her value amounted to 100 green stamps. Her gospel upbringing inspired her and also provided the opportunity and additional income to sing in nightclubs at night in New York City, to the point that finally she was able to afford her own apartment. She began to make a network of friends. Concurrently, she worked at the office of CORE, the Congress of Racial Equity. There, she learned grassroots organizing on civil rights issues. Having organized a successful fundraiser for CORE to send people to Mississippi to search for missing CORE workers, Dorothy experienced the men of CORE claiming credit for her event. In an early collaboration with a feminist white woman, she learned from the actress Shelley Winters to protect her interests and to always be credited for her work. Dorothy's community organizing on behalf of children, racial justice, welfare rights, housing, and women's rights reflects the haunting poetry of Maya Angelou. No one can make it out here alone. She came to New York alone, and through the next several decades dedicated her life to community life in Harlem and bringing people who felt alone together. To fully understand the depth and detail of this phenomenal woman's strength, abilities, influence, and accomplishments, I highly recommend the book With Her Fist Raised. Her community childcare efforts began when she opened her home to children she saw unattended on the West 80th Street, which was referred to as the poverty pocket. She visited and recruited parents, going door to door in the neighborhood where countless women were in need for daycare in order to get off of welfare. In 1968, Dorothy built something out of nothing when she opened the West 80th Street Daycare Center in a welfare hotel. In contrast to the typical daycare centers run according to government regulations, this center was described as flaunting protocol by doing as much for the community as it did for the children. One of the reasons for that is it was controlled, governed, and run by members of the community, the parents of the children who were being cared for in a way they had not been cared for previously. The center caught the attention of the New York press. An up-and-coming reporter wrote an article on the transformative nature of the daycare center and Dorothy's natural gift for organizing. The reporter was Gloria Steinem. Dorothy identified as a Black feminist, rooted in her experiences and the fundamental need for safety, food, shelter, and childcare in the community. She was drawn to the women's movement because it illuminated the problems that she and other women in the neighborhood faced daily. In Gloria Steinem, she found a collaborator in making change. From 1969 to 1973, they spoke together weekly at events all over the country to raise awareness of the women's movement, the Vietnam anti-war movement, civil rights, and to draw financial support for the daycare center. Gloria did not like public speaking. In fact, she was not a good public speaker. But as a nightclub singer, Dorothy felt very much at home on the stage, and so she was frequently the primary speaker. Their relationship represented potential. Lovett observes, Dorothy's style was to call out racism she saw in the white women's movement. She frequently took to the stage to articulate the way in which white women's privilege oppressed Black women, but also offered her friendship with Gloria as proof that this obstacle could be overcome. She was less dismissive of white women than most Black feminists, but she was very willing to be critical of white women unaware of both the extent to which they were being exploited by capitalism and the extent to which they were contributing to racism that kept women apart. Dorothy and Gloria modeled the complexity and importance of open conversations about race and privilege. Their shared work was challenging and exemplifies the intersectionality of privilege, employment, vulnerability, and racial inequality. Media bias highlighted Gloria and pushed Dorothy to the margins. This reflected the racism that granted only white women the agency and power to create political change. In response, Dorothy and Gloria collaborated and launched Ms. Magazine. Dorothy's involvement was instrumental, and many of her issues were written about in the magazine, but her work with the magazine is generally unknown. Her work expanded to lead the fight against the gentrification of Harlem, a 1990s version of ethnic cleansing. Working to increase racial integration and equality, and leading deeper community activism as the first Black owner of a copy shop in Harlem. This is significant because a copy shop then was the mimeograph machine that you ran off the flyers and the pages that communicated important issues and meetings and nonviolent activism throughout the city. And she did it in a way that was affordable for the African American community. Today, at age 83, Dorothy Pitman Hughes observes, "The symbolism of a Black and white woman standing together, demonstrating the Black Power salute, is as important now as it was in the 1970s. 45 years after their first portrait, the iconic photograph of Dorothy and Gloria was restaged to raise funds for community empowerment and community gardens in her little hometown in Georgia. Their portraits are symbols of hope. Their portraits are also symbolic of how much work remains to be done. Dorothy continues to keep her promise to make the world a better place. May her work serve as an inspiration for all of us to keep the promise and begin again with each new day. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be." Our closing song today is "Answering the Call of Love" by Jason Shelton, sung by the Foothills Unitarian Church Choir in Fort Collins, Colorado. I hope that not only will you sing along with the choir, but I hope that each of us can answer the call of love.
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is, oh God, we are answering the call of love. Hands joined together, as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together, as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together, as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love.
As we extinguish the chalice, we remember We can change the world, heart by heart, seed by seed. May we ever use our hands for lifting up. May we ever use our voices for speaking truth. May we consecrate each day and live with joy and wonder. May we sow in peace as all the wild things do. Wild and precious, we are. Life is. We remember our partner church in Tordet Falva and Reverend Loyosh and Tundi on the day that we were saying goodbye in 2019. This congregation is so generous. Thank you for your generosity as you remember our offertory recipient, the Creative Vision Human Development Institute, and other important areas of giving that we support as a community, Black Lives Matter and our partner church. Thank you for being with us this morning. We'll go into breakout rooms now, and then after a few minutes, we'll come back together for a larger group conversation.